Agatha Raisin and the Trouble at Primrose Path. Dear listeners, welcome to tonight's mystery. I'm Sam, your host, and I'm delighted to have you join me for another captivating tale. Before we begin, I'd love to know, where are you tuning in from tonight? Are you relaxing at home, on the go, or somewhere a bit unexpected? Share your answer in the comments. I always enjoy hearing from our wonderful community. And do not forget to like and subscribe me for more mysteries every day. Now, let's get cozy and dive into tonight's story. Agatha Raisin liked to imagine her mornings were predictable, but this one made a liar out of her before she'd even finished buttering her toast. A soft scrape sounded against the bottom of her cottage door, too deliberate to be the wind, too light to be a visitor knocking. She set her knife down, crossed the room, and found a single cream-colored envelope resting on the mat, like some timid guest waiting to be invited in. The handwriting on the front was elegant, curved, and unfamiliar. No sender's name, no address, just her own, Agatha Raisin, Carsley. She lifted a brow. Whoever delivered it knew exactly where to find her, and they hadn't bothered with pleasantry. She carried the envelope back to the table, studying it under the thin morning light filtering through her kitchen window. She slid a finger beneath the flap and unfolded a short note written in the same graceful hand. An invitation awaits you at the Primrose Path. Good luck, trouble, or both may follow. Noon. No signature. No explanation. She read it twice, then a third time, because she couldn't decide if she felt intrigued or annoyed. Possibly both. It was too early for riddles, and certainly too early for anyone to assume she had nothing better to do than trot off to some newly restored countryside inn with a reputation for odd tales and whispered gossip. Still, the Primrose Path. The place had reopened only last week, after being shuttered for years. Some villagers swore it was a charming spot with excellent scones and a breathtaking garden path. Others claimed it attracted misfortune. More than one local insisted it had a history, though no one could articulate what sort of history exactly. Carsley was generous with rumors, but stingy with details. Agatha tapped the envelope against the table, feeling the familiar stir, curiosity laced with suspicion, the precise blend that always tugged her into trouble. Whoever sent this had chosen their bait well. She dressed quickly, pulled on her coat, and stepped outside. The air was crisp, the kind of chill that made the village look cleaner, sharper. A few neighbors lingered near the green, chatting over their morning errands. The moment she appeared, their voices dipped into that almost silent murmur that wasn't truly silent at all. "Off somewhere, Agatha?" called Mrs. Dunwoody, far too brightly. "Just stepping out," Agatha replied, matching brightness with brightness, hers slightly sharper. She'd learned long ago that villagers could smell secrets like fresh bread. The whispers resumed the moment she moved past them. She caught fragments. Primrose Path reopened. Can't say it sits well. Lovely place, though. Unlucky before. There it was again. That divide. Delight on one side, unease on the other. Something about it made the letter feel heavier in her pocket. She paused near the village green, noticing a stray cat weaving between the benches, its tail flicking in a way that almost felt purposeful. Even the creature appeared aware of the morning's undercurrent. By the time she reached the corner of Lilac Lane, she had the distinct sensation she was being watched. Not in a menacing way, more like someone tracking her reaction, waiting for her next move. She turned casually, scanning cottage windows, hedges, and doorways. Nothing. Not a flutter of curtain or retreating figure. Still, the feeling lingered. The village morning hummed with quiet possibility. Agatha straightened her shoulders. If someone thought they could lure her somewhere without giving her the courtesy of a name, they would soon learn she did her best thinking when people underestimated her. Letter or no letter, mystery or no mystery, she'd walk into the Primrose Path on her own terms. Noon would come soon enough, and she intended to be ready for whatever, or whoever, was waiting.
Carsley looked perfectly ordinary as Agatha stepped deeper into the village, but the atmosphere clung to her like a faint perfume, pleasant at first whiff, then oddly lingering. The usual morning bustle carried on, a postman wheeling his bicycle toward the next lane, two children racing past with school bags flapping at their sides, and the familiar clatter of the bakery door opening and closing as locals collected their warm loaves. Yet something felt slightly skewed, as if the whole village had taken a quiet breath and decided not to let it out. She crossed the green, noticing how conversations paused just long enough to be noticeable. Carsley villagers were rarely subtle. They had the charming habit of pretending they weren't staring while simultaneously staring with great enthusiasm. Agatha lifted her chin and walked toward the local shop. If gossip was circling, that was where she'd hear it. She pushed open the door, greeted by the jingle of the bell and the comforting smell of polished wood, fresh fruit, and yesterday's newspapers stacked too neatly to be accidental. Mrs. Parker, always quick to chatter, stood behind the counter arranging a row of oranges no one ever bought. "Morning, Agatha," she chimed, but her eyes flicked toward Agatha's coat pocket, as if she somehow sensed the letter resting there. "Morning," Agatha replied, taking her time browsing the shelves. It didn't take long before Mrs. Parker's voice lowered into a whisper directed at another customer. "Well, I'm just saying, if you heard shouting near the Primrose Path, you'd remember it, wouldn't you?" The other customer shook her head. "It wasn't shouting. It was a crash, or something falling. Could have been furniture." "Furniture doesn't scream," Mrs. Parker muttered. "Screaming?" Agatha said lightly, pretending to be surprised. "I thought we were talking about redecorating." Both women startled, then offered matching smiles far too sweet to be genuine. "Oh, it was nothing," Mrs. Parker insisted. "Just a bit of noise last night. Someone must have dropped a tray or knocked over a chair. The inn's been busy with its reopening." "Busy is one word for it," the other woman murmured, immediately pretending to examine a jar of marmalade. Agatha narrowed her eyes. "You two seem remarkably committed to saying absolutely nothing." Mrs. Parker flapped a hand. "Rumors travel faster than truth round here. Best not take them seriously." But Agatha could tell they were holding something back. Their stories contradicted one another, and their anxious glances only thickened the air. She bought a tin of biscuits she didn't need and stepped outside. The moment she did, she nearly bumped into Mrs. Bloxby. "Agatha, dear," the vicar's wife said with her gentle, warm voice, though something in her eyes dimmed with concern. "I heard you received a letter." Agatha blinked. "Already?" Mrs. Bloxby offered an apologetic smile. "News tends to travel strangely fast in Carsley." "Strangely," Agatha repeated. "That's one word." Mrs. Bloxby lowered her voice. "Just be careful. The Primrose Path may look charming, but not everything blooming there is meant to be admired." Agatha frowned. "What does that mean?" "I'm not entirely certain," she said softly, "but I've felt a bit of unease since the reopening. Perhaps I'm imagining things." Agatha doubted that. Mrs. Bloxby's instincts were rarely wrong. They parted, and Agatha continued down the lane, her steps slowing when she spotted Bill Wong leaning against his car, writing something on a notepad. He looked up, tensed almost imperceptibly, and closed it too quickly. "Bill," she greeted. "Agatha." His tone was polite but clipped. He glanced past her, as if expecting someone else. "Busy morning?" she asked. "Always is." He shifted. "I hear you got a letter. So the entire village knows. Care to tell me who sent it?" Bill hesitated. "I don't know, and even if I did, Agatha, just stay out of whatever's happening at that inn." There it was. Clear discomfort, carefully contained. "Why?" she pressed. He avoided her eyes. "Just trust me. Something's off." "Then I'll find out what." Bill sighed and rubbed the bridge of his nose. "Agatha," but she was already walking away, determination filling each step. If whispers filled the village, she'd follow the one path everyone seemed reluctant to mention. The Primrose Path awaited.
Chapter 2. Arrival at the Primrose Path. Agatha Raisin had seen her fair share of charming English inns, cozy, crooked, ivy-kissed places with wobbly tables and tea that tasted faintly of nostalgia. But the Primrose Path was something else entirely. As she stepped out of her car and onto the gravel drive, she felt the same instinctive twinge she always got when something looked too flawless. The inn didn't merely welcome its guests, it practically glowed for them. A row of primroses lined the walkway, blooming in such perfect gradients of yellow and lilac that Agatha squinted, half expecting to find a gardener crouched behind them with a can of spray gloss. The freshly painted sign, a cheerful swirl of pastel pink and gold, hung from a polished iron bracket without a single chip or squeak. Even the wooden front steps looked recently sanded and varnished, as if they had been waiting impatiently for her arrival. "Too perfect," Agatha muttered, adjusting her handbag as she walked toward the door. "No place is this neat unless someone's hiding something." The door opened before she could knock. "Welcome to the Primrose Path." A woman with cascading honey-blonde curls and the kind of smile one only sees in brochures stood framed in the doorway. "You must be Agatha Raisin." "Must I?" Agatha replied, raising an eyebrow. "Funny. I don't recall announcing it." "Oh, word travels fast around here." Clarissa Honeysuckle's laugh chimed like cutlery in a glass. "Please, come in, come in. I've just made tea." Agatha stepped inside, instantly met by a wave of floral perfume and the warm glow of lamps placed with deliberate coziness. The sitting room was immaculate. Lace curtains, pristine cushions, a vase of primroses that matched the ones outside almost too perfectly. Every item seemed curated, polished, positioned. It made her feel as though she'd walked into a photograph rather than a business. Clarissa brushed invisible lint from her skirt. "You've had a long journey. A cup of Earl Grey will do you good." "Tea sounds lovely," Agatha said, though her attention was drifting. She spotted a set of faint, jagged scratches on the inside of the front window, so thin they might have been missed by anyone who wasn't naturally nosy. Agatha bent slightly. "What happened here?" Clarissa stiffened just enough for Agatha to feel it. "Oh, that! A cat." She laughed again, too quickly. "Stray thing. Scratched at the glass last week. Nothing to worry about." Agatha didn't comment, but the marks didn't look like the work of any cat she knew. Before she could press further, a young staff member hurried through the hall. A thin man with nervously darting eyes and sleeves rolled to his elbows. He nearly bumped into Clarissa, muttered an apology, and disappeared down a narrow back corridor without a backward glance. "Who's that?" Agatha asked. "Just Oliver," Clarissa replied, her smile reactivated. "He helps with errands. Bit shy. You know how some people are." Agatha watched the corridor. Funny. He didn't look shy. He looked like he'd swallowed a bad secret. Clarissa clapped her hands lightly. "Let's get that tea, shall we? I insist." Agatha followed her into the dining room, noting the half-finished repairs along the skirting boards. Fresh caulk still slightly tacky. Paint a shade lighter than the wall. Someone had rushed the job. The table was set for one. "For me?" Agatha asked. "Of course. A special welcome for a special guest." Agatha sat, but her instincts prickled. Clarissa's smile was warm, yes, but strained, stretched and brittle around the edges. Agatha lifted her teacup slowly, eyes scanning the two perfect flowers, the two bright lamps, the too eager hostess. Something here was beautifully wrong, and Agatha wasn't leaving until she found out what.
The tea service was exquisite. Bone china cups painted with tiny violets, silver spoons polished until Agatha could see her own suspicious expression reflected in them, and a porcelain teapot shaped like a blooming primrose. It should have been comforting, but Clarissa Honeysuckle's hands trembled just enough to ruin the illusion. When she poured, the stream wavered as though the tea itself was nervous. Agatha watched closely. "Lovely setup. You must get plenty of guests." "Oh, yes," Clarissa said, her voice bright but stretched thin. "We're quite popular this season." Agatha stirred her tea, listening to the faint clink of the spoon. Funny. The car park was empty. Clarissa's smile wobbled. "Well, it's a quiet day. People checking out. New arrivals expected later." Agatha lifted her cup. The tea was good. Too good. Exactly the right temperature, exactly the right steeping time. Another thing about this place that felt unnaturally perfect. "So," Agatha began casually, "about the letter." Clarissa froze.
For a split second, her cup hovered mid-air before touching the saucer with a sharp rattle. "Letter," she said softly, eyes too wide. "Yes, the one that brought me here. Delivered to my cottage. No return name." "Oh, Miss Raisin, I assure you, I sent no such thing. Why would I? I don't even know you." Agatha arched her brow. "Is that so? At least, not personally," Clarissa amended, fidgeting with a napkin. "Of course I've heard of you. Who hasn't? But a letter? No, you must be mistaken." Just then, the dining-room door creaked open. A young woman stepped inside, a staff member Agatha hadn't seen earlier. She wore a crisp apron and a worried expression that darkened the room's bright atmosphere. "Miss Honeysuckle, do you need anything?" Clarissa's shoulders tightened. "No, Lydia. Everything is perfectly fine. You may go." Lydia hesitated. Her gaze flicked toward Agatha, full of warning or pity or something caught between. Then she stepped back out, but not before giving a barely noticeable shake of her head. Agatha set down her teacup. "Your staff seems jumpy." "Oh, they're just overworked." Clarissa waved a hand, though her fingers quivered. "Tourist season and all that." Agatha tapped the table lightly. "Now, about another interruption." The same door opened again, this time only halfway. Lydia peered in, breathless. "Miss Honeysuckle, the deliveries?" "Later," Clarissa snapped, sharper than before. Too sharp. Lydia flinched and vanished. Agatha didn't hide her smirk. "Seems like they're very concerned about something." Clarissa folded her hands in her lap, knuckles whitening. "Please ignore them. They're prone to dramatics." Before Agatha could reply, a sudden, heavy thud shook the ceiling above them. The sound was unmistakable. Something solid dropping, or someone stumbling, or a piece of furniture crashing down. Whatever it was, it froze the air in the room. Clarissa's face drained of color. Her teacup rattled again. "Oh, that... Don't mind that. Only the old pipes settling." Agatha stared upward. "Pipes don't usually fall over." Another smaller thump answered, like an aftershock. Clarissa stood abruptly. "Excuse me, I should check on something upstairs." Before she left, she turned with a smile too bright to be genuine. "Please, enjoy your tea. Everything is absolutely fine." Agatha watched her hurry out, skirts swishing, shoulders stiff. The moment Clarissa disappeared into the hall, Lydia's face reappeared in the doorway, eyes wide, pleading silently. Agatha leaned forward. "Lydia," she whispered, "what's really going on here?" But Lydia only shook her head again, fear swallowing her words. Agatha sat back, gaze drifting upward to where the thud had come from. Something upstairs wasn't just unsettled, it was trying to be heard.
Chapter 3. Trouble Beneath the Surface. The garden behind the Primrose Path was the kind that could make a postcard jealous. Rows of bright foxgloves, clusters of primroses glowing like lanterns, and winding stone paths that encouraged slow, admiring strolls. Yet the moment Agatha stepped outside, a prickle of suspicion ran down her arms. Beauty this carefully arranged always carried the risk of hiding something. She took a slow breath, letting the scents swirl around her, lavender, damp earth, and a faint hint of fertilizer that smelled far too new. The inn's exterior might have been charming, but the garden felt freshly staged, like a theater set waiting for its cue. A thin man wearing gardening gloves appeared from behind a hedge. His shoulders jerked when he spotted her. "Oh, Miss Visitor, didn't expect anyone out here." Agatha smiled mildly. "I enjoy a good garden, and this one is quite the production." He laughed too quickly. "Just standard upkeep, really, nothing unusual." Agatha walked along a row of lilies. Their petals were flawless, but the soil beneath them was darker, wetter, and less compact than the surrounding beds. "These look recently planted." "Well, yes, some touch-ups," the gardener said, stepping closer as though to block her path. "We refresh the displays often. Keeps the guests happy." Agatha knelt, running a finger lightly across the soil. It clung to her skin. Very often, it seems. He twitched. Best not to get your hands dirty, ma'am. The soil's treated. She stood up, brushing off her fingers. Funny thing, though. The rest of the garden doesn't match. Look there. She pointed toward a patch near the roses, where a wide strip of earth looked uneven, as if someone had scraped it, then patted it back into place with haste. That area seems rather rushed. His face tightened. Just a replanting zone, nothing to see. Agatha walked toward it anyway. The gardener hurried after her, nearly tripping over a watering can. Really, ma'am, best to stay on the main paths. Some of the ground is soft. I've handled worse terrain, she replied. When she reached the uneven patch, she crouched low. The soil was lumpy, clods sitting awkwardly like they had been shoveled rather than tilled. A thin film of mulch had been sprinkled on the top. Too neat to be accidental, yet too sparse to look natural. Someone had tried to hide something, or the signs of something, but hadn't had the time or skill to do it properly. Agatha leaned closer still, noticing faint drag lines, barely visible beneath the mulch. They curved toward the rose bushes. Interesting. The gardener nearly dropped his trowel. Probably animals. Foxes roam at night. Foxes don't wear silk, Agatha murmured. She reached into the rosebush and carefully pulled out a small strip of fabric, dark, silky, torn at the edge. It shimmered slightly in the sunlight. Not part of the gardener's attire, not part of Clarissa's elegant dress, not part of Lydia's uniform either. The gardener's face drained of color. Where did that... must have blown in from somewhere. Carsley has many things, Agatha said, turning the fabric between her fingers. But stylish silk scraps drifting on the wind aren't one of them. He swallowed hard. Look, I really should return to my duties. So soon? Agatha asked. You seem so keen to keep me company. He took a step back, fumbling with his gloves. Just busy, lots to maintain. If you need anything, ask inside. Without waiting for her reply, he hurried down the path and vanished behind a tall line of hedges, moving faster than any gardener with nothing to hide. Agatha stared at the disturbed soil, the drag marks, the torn fabric. Someone had passed through this garden recently, and they hadn't gone willingly.
Evening at the Primrose Path settled in with a deceptive softness. Warm lanterns glowed beneath the inn's eaves, and a faint breeze brushed through the garden, carrying the scent of roses and damp soil. From a distance, it looked peaceful, exactly the kind of place someone would choose for a quiet escape. But after what Agatha had seen earlier, the serenity felt like a curtain drawn over something restless. She stepped back inside, her shoes clicking lightly against the polished wooden floor. The lobby was empty except for a single lamp shining from the reception desk, casting long shadows across the room. Too quiet, she thought. Inns preparing for dinner usually buzzed with chatter, clattering dishes and footsteps. Tonight the silence pressed against her ears. Agatha followed the faint glow from the dining room, hoping to catch sight of Clarissa. Instead, a sudden high-pitched argument sliced through the stillness. "I told you we had to be more careful." Clarissa's voice rose sharply from behind the kitchen door. A lower, gruffer voice answered. Agatha instantly recognized the gardener. "And I told you it wasn't my fault. She was poking around where she shouldn't be." Agatha froze just outside the doorway, leaning slightly toward the crack. The kitchen smelled of herbs and steam, but the tension inside soured the air. "She found it," Clarissa hissed. "Do you understand what that means? She found a bit of fabric. Could have been anything. You know very well it wasn't anything." Clarissa's tone dropped to a dangerous whisper. "If word spreads..." Agatha shifted her weight, and the floorboard beneath her let out a faint but unmistakable creak. Instant silence. A clatter of dishes followed, too deliberate to be accidental. Agatha straightened, smoothing her jacket just as the kitchen door swung open. Clarissa appeared with a bright, brittle smile, her cheeks flushed from more than the heat of cooking. "Oh, Agatha!" she exclaimed, as though she hadn't been mid-fury moments before. "I didn't hear you come in." "I imagine you were busy," Agatha said, peering past Clarissa's shoulder.
The gardener stood by the counter, suddenly focused on chopping vegetables with unnecessary intensity. "Just preparing dinner," Clarissa said quickly. "Everything's a bit hectic today." "Evidently," Agatha murmured. Clarissa clasped her hands together. "Do let me know if you need anything. I'll have tea in the lounge shortly." With that, she closed the kitchen door a bit too fast, the latch clicking sharply. Agatha walked toward the lounge, but her attention remained fixed on the closed door. The argument had been more than a spat about work. The words, "she found it," replayed in her mind, echoing with meaning neither of them intended her to hear. She settled in an armchair near the window. Outside, darkness had fully descended, turning the garden into a black silhouette of shapes she couldn't identify. Every now and then she imagined seeing movement, though it might have been nothing more than branches swaying. Just as she began to relax, a series of soft footsteps sounded in the hallway behind her. Slow, measured, as if someone didn't want to be noticed. Agatha stood immediately. The footsteps quickened, then faded around the corner. She followed, only to find the corridor empty, silent, with each door closed neatly, lamps glowing in their holders. No sign of anyone. She waited a moment, listening. Nothing. Returning to the lounge, she felt the weight of unanswered questions settling around her. The gardener's panic, Clarissa's tightly controlled expressions, the mysterious footsteps, everything pointed toward a secret pressing against the walls of the inn. As the night deepened, Agatha knew one thing with certainty. Whatever was hidden here wasn't staying quiet for long.
Chapter 4. The First Real Clue. Agatha walked briskly along the narrow lane leading to Bill Wong's office, her thoughts circling the Primrose Path like bees around honey. She hadn't expected to find answers so soon, yet the tug of curiosity and suspicion was too strong to ignore. The evening air had a chill to it, brushing against her coat as if warning her to tread carefully. But Agatha never let a little cold or a looming mystery deter her. Bill's office smelled faintly of ink and lemon polish, a scent that always meant order and control. He looked up from a stack of files, eyebrows raised, in that precise mix of amusement and exasperation that had defined him for years. "Raisin," he said, voice steady, though his eyes held a shadow of concern. "You shouldn't be wandering around this late." "Late? I'm only just arriving. Besides, I thought I'd check in with the most reliable man in Carsley." He sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. "Reliable doesn't mean fearless." He gestured to a chair. "Sit." Agatha perched on the edge, careful to lean forward, ready for whatever fragment of truth he might let slip. Bill's eyes shifted toward the window, then back, as though weighing each word. "You shouldn't get involved with the Primrose Path. It looks harmless, quaint even, but it isn't." Agatha tilted her head. "Isn't it? The flowers are blooming nicely. The tea is perfect. The staff polite enough to make you suspicious. Charming, in fact." His lips twitched, almost a smile, but he didn't laugh. "Charming can be a mask. You know that better than anyone." He leaned back, fingers intertwined. "I've been keeping an eye on the place for a while. Something is off, illegal, possibly dangerous." Agatha's pulse quickened. "Dangerous? How?" He hesitated. That pause told her more than words ever could. "I can't say much, just there's someone missing. A person last seen near the inn. No one's talking about it, openly. Not yet." Agatha's brow furrowed. "Missing? You mean recently?" "Yes, a few weeks ago," Bill said quietly, eyes darkening. "We're not sure if it's connected to the reopening or something older, but I suspect it might be." He leaned forward. "That's all I can tell you. Too many questions, too few answers, and you getting involved would complicate things." Agatha studied him. His voice was firm, yet she sensed the tug of internal conflict, duty versus protection. He wanted to keep her away, but couldn't hide that his concern ran deeper. "Complicate things, or protect me?" she asked softly. Bill's hands tightened on the edge of the desk. "Both," he admitted. "You have a habit of inserting yourself where danger lurks. I've seen it before, and I don't want you in over your head." She leaned back, letting the weight of his words settle. "And yet you still told me someone is missing." He nodded once. "Enough for you to understand that this isn't a simple inn with two perfect flowers.
Something is wrong, and it's deeper than anyone admits. Agatha absorbed it, the pieces beginning to shift in her mind. The torn fabric, the hurriedly planted flowers, Clarissa's nervousness, Lydia's interruptions, all of it now cast in a new light. There was a story here, one that people were trying to hide. Bill's partial confession confirmed what she'd suspected. This was bigger than a harmless village inn. "Thank you, Bill," she said quietly. "I'll be careful, but I need to see it for myself." He stared at her, the shadow in his eyes mingling concern and resignation. "Just don't do anything reckless. The Primrose Path isn't as forgiving as it looks." Agatha smiled faintly, though her mind raced with anticipation. "I never am, not when the truth is hiding in plain sight." Agatha wandered back through the quiet streets of Carsley, her mind replaying Bill Wong's words, someone missing, something wrong at the Primrose Path. She let her thoughts drift like clouds over the village rooftops, piecing together the fragments she had seen. The uneven garden soil, the torn silk, Clarissa's tightly controlled smile. Each detail had taken on a sharper edge after Bill's warning. As she passed the familiar antique shop, tucked between the bakery and the florist, a glint caught her eye. She stopped, peering through the window. Something small, metallic, and familiar rested among the curated display of vintage trinkets. A delicate brooch, shaped like a rose, the petals intricately enameled. Her stomach gave a little twist. She recognized it immediately from a snippet of gossip circulating weeks ago. The missing person had been wearing a brooch just like this when last seen. Agatha pushed open the shop door. The bell jingled lightly, and the scent of polished wood and faint musk greeted her. The shopkeeper, an elderly man with spectacles perched precariously on the bridge of his nose, looked up with a flicker of apprehension. "That one," she said, pointing at the brooch. "Where did it come from?" The man hesitated, adjusting his spectacles. It was found, near the Primrose Path, actually, on the edge of the garden. Someone brought it in. I don't know much more." Agatha arched her eyebrow. "Someone found it? Why is it here, then?" He coughed softly, clearly uncomfortable. "Well, people tend to drop things off, you see. I keep them until the owners come forward. If they don't, I sell them eventually. That's all." His hands tightened slightly on the counter, betraying a flicker of unease. "Very well," Agatha said, producing her purse. She handed over the coins quickly, careful not to let the shopkeeper read too much into her eagerness. With a gentle smile, he placed the brooch in a small paper bag, still avoiding her gaze. Once outside, Agatha examined the brooch in the soft evening light. The enameled petals shimmered delicately, catching hints of the fading sun. She turned it over, and there it was, engraved initials, tiny but unmistakable, M.L. Her pulse quickened, a direct, undeniable connection between the missing person and the Primrose Path. Agatha tucked the brooch safely into her coat pocket and walked on, feeling the thrill of the first tangible evidence in the tangled puzzle. The village streets felt emptier now, the fading light casting longer shadows that seemed to urge caution. Yet there was also a spark of satisfaction. At last, a piece of the story had revealed itself, quiet but clear. She paused at the corner, considering her next move. If the brooch had been found near the inn, it meant someone, or something, was leaving breadcrumbs, intentionally or not. And if she didn't follow them, who would? Agatha straightened her shoulders, resolve coiling within her. The mystery was no longer a distant curiosity. It was alive, urgent, and waiting for someone brave enough to uncover it. And that someone, she knew, was her.
Chapter 5. Night at the Primrose Path. Agatha stepped into her room at the Primrose Path with a practiced eye, noting every detail. The furniture was polished oak, the bedspread neatly folded, and the curtains tied back to catch the fading light. Cozy, certainly, but an inexplicable chill clung to the corners. She shrugged off the feeling as nerves, though the hairs at the nape of her neck insisted otherwise. Her gaze drifted to the wardrobe. Faint, jagged scratches marred the smooth wood, almost invisible unless one looked closely.
Agatha knelt, running a finger along them. Not recent, too faded, but deliberate. She made a mental note. Whoever had been here before had left a trace, perhaps by accident. Turning toward the window, she noticed faint muddy footprints on the polished floor. Someone had entered, moved about, and left no other sign except these small, careless impressions. Her eyes followed their path to the corner, then back to the bed. Whoever had been here moved lightly, stealthily, yet their presence had been real. A scent drifted in from the corridor, or perhaps a vent, sharp, expensive perfume, floral and heady. She inhaled subtly. Not Clarissa's, not Lydia's. Whoever had passed this way had wanted to be noticed, if only by scent. She unpacked her belongings quietly, setting her bag on the chair. Every creak of the floor under her own feet made her heart jump slightly. By the time she was ready for bed, night had deepened, shadows pooled in corners, and the muted glow of a bedside lamp painted the walls in soft ochre. Safe, cozy, or so it seemed. Lying under the covers, she positioned herself near the edge of the bed, eyes toward the door. Every shadow in the room seemed alive, stretching unnaturally as the minutes passed. And then she heard it. Soft steps in the corridor, slow, deliberate, halting just outside her door. She froze, holding her breath. The knob didn't turn, no rattling of keys. Just the sound of someone or something lingering. Agatha stayed still, pretending to sleep, every muscle taut with awareness. The steps moved slightly, then paused again. She could hear the soft rustle of fabric, almost imperceptible, like someone smoothing a sleeve. The corridor was otherwise silent, but the subtle noises were enough to make her pulse quicken. Minutes passed, each stretching longer than the last. The faint perfume wafted again, stronger now, curling into the room. The footsteps receded slightly, then returned, tentative. Agatha remained calm, though her mind raced. Whoever was outside had reason to be cautious, and the room had already revealed its secrets. Scratches, footprints, a scent not meant for her alone. Finally, the footsteps faded, leaving the hall quiet, the shadows undisturbed. Agatha exhaled softly, keeping her eyes closed. She let the lamp's glow soften the room, but her mind catalogued every detail. Every trace in this room, physical and intangible, pointed toward something hidden, something deliberate. Sleep hovered just beyond reach, a fragile promise. Agatha stayed alert, mind sharp. The Primrose Path had welcomed her with charm and comfort, yet tonight it whispered caution, and Agatha knew she would not ignore its warnings.
Midnight pressed against the Primrose Path like a velvet curtain. Agatha, restless and alert, slipped from her bed and pulled on her coat, careful not to disturb the quiet. Each step along the polished corridor was measured, muffled against the rugs she had noted earlier. The inn was asleep, or at least it pretended to be. Her instincts guided her toward the kitchen. Shadows stretched from doorways, warped by the dim lanterns, and every familiar scent now felt layered with secrecy. A faint sound, a low murmur, caught her attention. Agatha slowed, pressing herself against the wall beside the kitchen doorway. Voices. "Before that woman finds out, Clarissa, we need to hide it." The tone was sharp, urgent, and laced with fear. Clarissa's voice wavered, high-pitched but controlled. I understand, but it's not that simple. You don't know what could happen if anyone discovers." A second voice, colder, more commanding, cut through the air. "It has to be done tonight. No exceptions. Make sure it is unseen. Make sure nothing leads back here." Agatha's pulse spiked. She hadn't heard this voice before. Deep, measured, almost a whisper that carried authority. Whoever it was, they held power over Clarissa, and perhaps over the inn itself. She leaned closer, straining to catch the words, but the instant she made a subtle movement, both voices stopped. Silence slammed into the hallway, thick and almost tangible. Agatha held her breath. Then a door clicked, sharp, deliberate. The sound of a key turning echoed faintly, though she couldn't see anyone. Curious and cautious, Agatha stepped forward. The floorboards beneath her were damp from recent cleaning, or something more deliberate. She knelt, noticing fresh, muddy boot prints stretching across the corridor. They led toward the back of the kitchen, stopping at a sturdy wooden door she hadn't seen used before. The door was locked. Her fingers hovered over the handle. The boots had come this way, crossed the threshold, and then vanished. The cellar beneath the inn had secrets it was determined to guard. Her mind raced. The Primrose Path, with its polished floors, blooming flowers, and sweet perfume, had always seemed charming. But tonight, in the shadows, it revealed another face, one of urgency, fear, and hidden authority. Clarissa's tone, frantic and restrained, had betrayed a truth she wasn't meant to hear. Someone, or something, was moving behind the scenes, orchestrating the inn's mysteries with precision. Agatha stood, straightening her coat, eyes scanning the hallway. The cellar door loomed, ominous and silent, holding its secrets behind an iron lock. The scent of damp earth and faint perfume lingered in the corridor, a reminder that appearances could deceive. She stepped back, leaving the prints untouched, committing every detail to memory. Whoever had entered the cellar tonight had done so deliberately, leaving traces meant to be followed if one knew where to look. And Agatha knew. The puzzle pieces were stacking higher, forming an image she could almost, but not yet, see clearly. The inn no longer felt like a welcoming place to rest. It was a facade, concealing schemes, secrets, and possibly danger. And Agatha, stubborn and observant as ever, was now entwined in whatever lay beneath the Primrose Path.
Chapter 6. Secrets Underground. The first light of morning seeped through the small windows of the Primrose Path, softening the inn's exterior and lending an air of normalcy. But Agatha had no intention of enjoying sunlight today. Her mind replayed the events of the night, the hurried voices, the cellar door, and the muddy boot prints. It was time to see what lay beneath the inn. She waited until the staff were distracted with breakfast preparations, the clatter of dishes and hum of conversation masking her movements. A quiet few moments later, she crept to the cellar door. Her fingers trembled slightly as she produced a small set of tools she'd brought just in case. The lock yielded with a faint click, and the door groaned as it swung open, revealing a steep, narrow staircase descending into shadow. The air grew colder immediately, carrying a faint metallic scent that prickled Agatha's senses. She paused at the top step, letting her eyes adjust. The cellar was long and low-ceilinged, walls lined with stone and stacked crates that looked old, yet disturbed recently. Footprints, fresh, muddied, and scattered, crisscrossed the floor, proving her suspicions. Someone had been here not long ago. She stepped carefully, keeping her coat from catching on the rough-hewn beams. A small desk caught her attention, tucked in a corner between two crates. Papers were scattered across it, torn, some edges singed slightly. She bent closer, reading the faint handwriting. Threats, mentions of secrets, and notes indicating that someone was being forced to remain hidden. A name appeared repeatedly, crossed out in haste, and rewritten alongside desperate pleas. The writing was hurried, panicked, each line searing with anxiety. A metallic smell intensified near the desk, sharp and unfamiliar, like iron or old machinery. Agatha wrinkled her nose but didn't retreat. This cellar was telling her something serious, something dangerous. She carefully collected the loose diary pages, slipping them into her coat. Every line seemed to confirm what she had begun to suspect. The inn was more than a charming facade. Someone here was keeping secrets, and fear had shaped the very structure of this hidden world. Moving deeper, she discovered a locked storage room at the far far end. The door bore scratches around the keyhole, suggesting repeated attempts to force it open. The wood was scarred, edges nicked, and faint footprints in the dust hinted that it had been used recently. Whoever had entered this room had taken care to hide the activity from casual observers. Agatha tried the handle. It didn't budge. She pressed her ear to the wood, listening, but there was nothing, only a faint hum of still air and her own heartbeat. The cellar was silent beyond the metallic tang in the air, yet Agatha could feel the tension lingering, as if the walls themselves had absorbed the urgency, fear, and secrecy of the previous nights. Crates, footprints, diary pages, and a locked door, all fragments pointing towards something larger, more perilous, and deeply concealed. She took a steadying breath and glanced back toward the staircase. The light from the window above barely penetrated the gloom, but it was enough to remind her that once she left, the inn would awaken to normality, masking the secrets she had uncovered. Whoever had orchestrated this, the torn diary pages, the hidden footsteps, the locked storage room, was counting on that illusion. Agatha straightened, tucking the diary into her coat pocket. She knew she had a partial picture, but the cellar confirmed it. The Primrose Path was central to something serious, and she had stepped directly into the heart of it. One wrong move could alert those responsible, but Agatha felt the familiar spark of determination. She would uncover the truth, piece by piece, no matter the danger.
Agatha returned to the inn's main hall, diary pages tucked securely in her coat pocket. The morning light made the polished wood gleam, the flowers in the hallway's vases glowing cheerfully. But Agatha's mind had no patience for beauty. Her thoughts were on Clarissa and the cellar, and the secrets she had uncovered below. It was time to confront the innkeeper directly. She found Clarissa arranging teacups near the dining room. The moment Agatha stepped in, Clarissa's hands froze mid-motion. Her smile was brittle, nerves fraying at the edges. "Miss Raisin?" she said, voice higher than usual. "Back so soon?" "Yes," Agatha replied evenly, letting the diary pages peek out just enough to catch Clarissa's attention. "I had a look around last night, and this morning. I believe you understand why I'm concerned." Clarissa's eyes darted nervously to the floor, then back up. Her hands twitched as though she wanted to reach for something but couldn't. Finally, her voice cracked. I didn't mean for any of this. I've been threatened, connected to that missing person. They made me do things, keep things quiet. I swear, I'm innocent. I never harmed anyone. I just—" She swallowed, voice catching. "I was terrified." Agatha leaned forward, folding her arms. "So you've been coerced. But someone else is behind this." Clarissa nodded, tears brimming. "Yes, someone wanted me scared, and I followed. I thought if I stayed in line, no one would get hurt." Agatha's mind raced. This was bigger than a troubled innkeeper. A pattern was emerging: coercion, threats, secrecy, someone orchestrating from the shadows. But before she could ask more, a low, controlled voice cut through the hall. "You've seen too much." Agatha froze. The voice was calm, dangerous, and unmistakably authoritative. She turned sharply. The gardener stood in the doorway, his hands resting casually on his hips, yet his presence radiated menace. The warm, polite man from the garden earlier was gone. This was someone entirely different, someone who had orchestrated fear and maintained control. "You should stop digging," he said slowly, almost conversationally. "Not for your safety, for ours. One more misstep, and you'll regret it." Agatha didn't flinch, though her heart rate quickened. She studied him carefully. The calm precision of his posture, the cold edge in his eyes. He wasn't just a gardener. He was a guardian of secrets, a sentinel for whoever was truly in charge. Clarissa stepped slightly forward, shielding Agatha. "Please," she whispered, "don't make them angry." Agatha's mind assessed every detail: footprints in the cellar, the torn diary, Clarissa's fear, the metallic smell. All of it pointed to an organized, deliberate network of control.
And now the gardener had revealed himself as more than he seemed, confirming her suspicion. The plot involved more people than she had imagined, each playing a part in the Primrose Path's hidden operations. She straightened, calm despite the tension. "Threats don't scare me," Agatha said firmly, voice steady. "I will uncover the truth, whether you like it or not." The gardener's lips twitched, but his eyes remained unreadable. He stepped back into the shadows, leaving a charged silence in the hall. Clarissa's shoulders sagged in relief, but Agatha knew the danger wasn't over. It had only become more real, more immediate, and infinitely more complex. The Primrose Path had revealed its first layer of terror, and Agatha, unshaken, was already planning her next move. Chapter 7. The Missing Person Revealed. Agatha approached the cellar door under the cover of early morning mist, her coat pulled tightly around her. She wasn't alone this time. Bill Wong had appeared unexpectedly, his presence quiet but reassuring. "I can't let you do this alone," he said in a low voice, producing a set of lockpicks he had borrowed from the police archive. Agatha smiled faintly, grateful for the backup. The Primrose Path had proven more dangerous than she had imagined. The cellar staircase groaned under their careful steps, shadows stretching across the stone walls. Agatha's heart pounded with anticipation and a hint of fear. Every detail from her previous visit, the crates, the footprints, the faint metallic smell loomed larger now, hinting at the secrets hidden deeper within. At the far end, the storage room door loomed, scuffed and locked tight. Bill knelt, tools in hand, and in moments the lock yielded with a soft click. Agatha pushed the door open, and their combined breath caught at the sight inside. The room was small, dimly lit by a narrow window high on the wall. Amidst scattered boxes and discarded cloth, a figure sat huddled against the corner, eyes wide open with relief and exhaustion. It was the missing person, weak, pale, and trembling, but unmistakably alive. "Thank heavens," Agatha whispered, stepping forward slowly. "Are you all right?" The figure nodded faintly, voice hoarse. I'm okay now, thanks to you." Their eyes flickered toward Clarissa, whose pale face appeared momentarily in Agatha's memory. "I was trapped here after seeing something I shouldn't have. Clarissa tried to help, but she was overpowered. The gardener, he's not what he seems. He works with her business partner, someone shady, dangerous, who doesn't care who they hurt to cover their tracks." Bill knelt beside the figure, checking their strength. "You've been through a lot," he said gently. "We'll get you out safely. Can you walk?" "Slowly," they admitted, pushing to their feet with support from Agatha and Bill. Every step was tentative, each movement measured to avoid making noise. Agatha's eyes swept the room one last time. Torn papers, discarded supplies, and the faint scent of metal lingered, marking the room as a place of fear and imprisonment. Yet the relief that the missing person was alive outweighed the darkness. Here was proof of both danger and resilience. They navigated the narrow corridor carefully, retracing Agatha's earlier steps. Every creak of the floorboard sounded louder in the tense silence, yet their focus remained on escape. At the staircase, Agatha whispered, "We need to move quickly. The gardener cannot know we freed them." Emerging from the cellar into the first pale light of dawn, the trio paused in the inn's shadowed rear garden. Bill glanced around, ensuring no one observed them. "We'll take them somewhere safe. Then we plan the next steps. Evidence, statements, everything to expose the truth." The missing person's hand trembled slightly as Agatha offered support. "I thought no one would come for me," they admitted softly, voice still weak. "Clarissa, she tried. She really did." Agatha nodded, the pieces aligning in her mind. Clarissa's nervous smiles, the hidden diary pages, and the gardener's veiled threats all pointed to a larger scheme. The inn's charm had masked a network of coercion, but now, at last, a chance to reveal the truth had emerged. Together, Agatha and Bill helped the missing person toward a hidden exit at the side of the inn, where a narrow lane would carry them to safety. Each step was careful, calculated, yet filled with a new energy, a sense of hope and possibility. The Primrose Path loomed silently behind them, still radiant and deceptively serene, but Agatha knew the facade could no longer hold. The
The missing person's testimony, the gardener's duplicity, and the business partner's shadowy presence had all been revealed. The story was shifting, and she was ready to see it through to the end.
The three of them moved quickly, keeping low behind the hedges as the first light of dawn began to warm the Primrose Path's winding garden. Agatha's mind raced, balancing caution with urgency. Every step could draw the gardener's attention, every rustle of leaves a potential alarm. The rescued person leaned heavily on Bill's arm, and Agatha scanned their surroundings, noting each turn and shadowed corner. A sudden movement froze them in place. From behind a neatly trimmed rose arch, the gardener emerged, his eyes narrowing as he caught sight of them. He didn't shout, he didn't need to. His presence alone radiated authority and menace. "Going somewhere?" he said, voice low and sharp. Agatha's heart leapt, but she kept her expression calm, forcing herself to think quickly. "We're just checking the morning dew," she said, tilting her head innocently. The gardener didn't respond. He advanced, steady, precise. That was the moment Agatha had been waiting for. "Run!" she whispered sharply to the missing person and Bill, and they bolted along a winding path between flower beds and stone lanterns. The gardener pursued immediately, moving with surprising speed for his frame. Agatha glanced around, eyes calculating, then veered sharply toward a narrow trail leading past a muddy patch near a fountain. She raised her voice in mock distress, baiting him. "Wait! Don't step in the mud!" she called. The gardener, focused entirely on intercepting them, didn't see the treacherous ground until it was too late. His boot sank into the soft earth with a squelch, then slipped, sending him sprawling forward with an undignified thump. Agatha didn't pause to watch. She sprinted past, keeping the momentum, while Bill rushed forward to secure him. With a swift but controlled movement, Bill grabbed the gardener's arms, restraining him without incident. The rescued person caught their breath, leaning against a rose trellis, relief flooding their face. I thought he was faster," they murmured, eyes wide but grateful. Agatha smiled briefly, brushing dirt from her sleeve, letting the tension ease slightly without letting her guard down entirely. Clarissa emerged from the inn doorway, drawn by the commotion. She froze at the sight, the gardener pinned, Bill holding him firmly, Agatha standing alert nearby. Her face flickered through shades of guilt, fear, and tentative relief. I didn't think it would come to this," she whispered, voice trembling. Her hands twisted together nervously, betraying her earlier attempts at composed charm. The gardener, still struggling slightly, muttered under his breath, a grudging confession slipping out. "You shouldn't have meddled. It was never supposed to go this far." His words carried weight, confirming the depth of his involvement and hinting at others still lurking behind the scenes. Bill released him carefully, keeping a firm grip, and glanced at Agatha. "The authorities will handle the rest," he said, voice steady and calm. Agatha nodded, letting the adrenaline fade while keeping her attention on Clarissa, the rescued person, and the remaining mysteries of the inn. For a moment, the garden returned to serenity, dew glistening on petals, the fountain's water sparkling, and birds beginning their morning song. But Agatha knew that the calm was temporary. The Primrose Path had yielded one layer of truth, and though danger had been averted, the story was far from over. Yet for now, victory and relief lingered in the crisp morning air.
Chapter 8. The Truth at Last. Morning sunlight bathed the Primrose Path in a soft golden glow, transforming its gardens and polished windows into a scene of calm domesticity. Yet for Agatha and Bill, the inn held more than beauty. It held answers. With the gardener secured and the missing person safe, they had time to trace the threads of deception that had woven themselves through the inn over weeks. Every footprint, every diary page, every hesitant glance now fit together in a pattern only Agatha's mind could assemble. They began in the garden, following the winding paths and reviewing the disturbed flower beds and muddy patches in her mind. The uneven plantings, once dismissed as careless gardening, had been deliberate attempts to conceal tracks. The torn silk in the rosebush, an early clue, now clearly marked the path the missing person had been forced along before being trapped. Agatha traced the imagined route with her finger over the soil, letting the visual connections solidify. Every movement, every footprint was calculated, she murmured, almost to herself. Next, they moved to the cellar. Agatha crouched near the small desk, touching the remaining torn diary pages. The entries painted a picture of fear and coercion, threats delivered in whispers, instructions to remain hidden, and desperate attempts to signal for help. Clarissa's involvement became clear. The innkeeper had been attempting to protect the person trapped below, balancing compliance with the gardener and the unseen partner against her own moral conscience. Her nervous smiles, evasive answers, and trembling hands all reflected this inner conflict. Bill examined the locked storage room, now opened and empty save for scattered remnants of the illegal operation. Agatha watched him note the arrangements of crates and objects, visualizing the control the gardener and the business partner exerted. The metallic smell she had detected in the cellar was the residue of chemicals used in the hidden operation, confirming that what she had sensed subconsciously was indeed part of the criminal setup. They paused at her room, the scene of footsteps, scratches, and mysterious perfume. Agatha's eyes scanned each detail once more. Every clue had been a breadcrumb in a trail that led to the truth. Clarissa had tried to maintain order and protect lives. The gardener had enforced compliance, and the partner had orchestrated the threats. The room, like the rest of the inn, was a stage where fear and appearances had played out in silence. Sitting together on a bench in the inn's garden, Agatha and Bill reviewed the timeline. From the first strange letter to the rediscovery of the missing person, each event now had purpose and consequence. Agatha noted that even the smallest observation, overheard whispers, a sudden thud, subtle signs of nervousness, had been vital. "It's remarkable how much the ordinary can conceal," she said softly. Bill nodded, his expression reflecting relief, but also respect for her insight. Clarissa emerged from the inn, cautiously approaching. Her features softened as she glanced at the garden, the cellar, and the quieted corridors. Agatha's mind acknowledged the truth of her role. She had acted out of fear, yes, but also courage. The diary pages, the hidden actions, and her eventual cooperation had been crucial in resolving the situation. As the sun climbed higher, the inn's tension eased. The garden smelled sweet, and the corridors no longer carried the metallic edge of fear, and even the once threatening shadows seemed tame. Agatha allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. The mysteries had been untangled, the lies exposed, and the danger lifted. Yet she knew, as always, that quiet villages and charming inns often held secrets still waiting just beneath the surface. For now, though, the Primrose Path was calm, orderly, and safe, and Agatha allowed herself to breathe deeply, savoring the clarity and satisfaction of a mystery brought to its full, intricate conclusion.
Agatha's boots crunched along the familiar path to her cottage, the morning mist lifting to reveal Carsley in gentle sunlight. Birds trilled cheerfully in the hedges, and the village, as always, seemed to breathe a steady, unhurried rhythm. For the first time in days, she felt the tension of the Primrose Path's mysteries ebbing, replaced by the comforting certainty of home. Mrs. Bloxby's voice called from the garden gate before Agatha even reached it. "Back so soon, Miss Raisin?" she said, a mischievous glint in her eyes. "And not a single limp or broken bone, I hope." Her chuckle was warm, teasing, the kind that made Agatha's lips twitch in amusement. Soon a small crowd of neighbors had gathered, all curious and eager for details, yet careful not to intrude. Bill stood among them, his hands folded, expression neutral, but eyes hinting at pride. "You've been busy," he said quietly when Agatha approached. "I trust everyone is safe now?" "All accounted for," she replied, shrugging lightly, "though I dare say the gardener will think twice before underestimating me again." A ripple of laughter passed through the onlookers. Mrs. Blocksby leaned in conspiratorially. "And here I thought you were merely nosy," she teased, tapping Agatha's arm. "Turns out your curiosity is positively heroic." Agatha allowed herself a small smile. The chaos of the past days, the secret cellar, the missing person, the gardener's threats, felt almost unreal under the steady, watchful gaze of the village she had come to love. She followed Bill toward her front door, glancing back at the familiar sights, the bakery with smoke curling from its chimney, the cobblestone street glinting in the early sun, the small flowering hedges lining each path. It was a village untouched by the dangers she had just navigated, yet intimately connected to her adventure. Inside her cottage, she poured herself a cup of tea, the scent of bergamot mingling with the warm, familiar aroma of the morning. The cup was heavy in her hands, grounding her in the moment, yet her thoughts lingered on the Primrose Path, the diary pages, the muddy footprints, Clarissa's fear, the gardener's menace. Even with the mystery resolved, the echoes of intrigue remained, a soft hum beneath the calm. She was just settling into her armchair, her cat curling at her feet, when something slipped silently under the door. Agatha bent to retrieve it, raising an eyebrow. A single envelope, plain and unmarked, sat waiting. She opened it carefully. There was no letter, no message, only a pressed primrose, delicate and fragrant despite its flatness. Her lips curved in a knowing smile. Someone had left a symbol, a whisper of intent, a quiet suggestion that her adventures were far from over. Agatha set the flower on the table beside her tea and leaned back, eyes tracing the patterns of sunlight across the room. The village hummed outside, serene and ordinary, yet the small primrose seemed to pulse with possibility. A new mystery had begun, subtle and inviting, promising intrigue in its gentle, understated way. And Agatha, settled and content, sipped her tea, ready for whatever the future might bring.